Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and today is finally the day. We've been previewing it all week, we've been hyping it up, we've been anticipating it, and today we finally get the big update for Dota Underlords. And as the name implies, this is going to be a long one, so settle in and let's get right into it. So first off, we've got new modes. We've got the duo mode, we've got the freestyle mode. Duo mode is going to be a new version where you and a buddy will team up and you will play against 7 other teams for a total of 16 players in the game. You can trade heroes and gold with your teammate, and to queue up right now you're going to need to make a party with a friend, but based on this wording, this implies to me that eventually there'll be a queue where you'll be paired up with somebody randomly. I haven't got a chance to play duo mode yet, but it looks really exciting and I can't wait to see how the meta develops around that and what tournament structure appears around it, if people are going to be hosting tournaments, if there's going to be a ranked ladder with it, and all kinds of other cool stuff. I think duo mode is going to be an awesome addition to the game. Freestyle mode is more of a sandbox mode where you can see, build your own composition, see what the make an opponent's composition, and see how they fight. It's kind of just like a way to play around and test the game without being up against a real opponent where you have absolute control. So I really like that from a content creator standpoint, so I'll be able to make guides a lot easier and give examples a whole lot easier, so really looking forward to that. Alright, general gameplay changes. First off, the big one, we've got a jail. Every 24 hours, a small number of heroes are detained in the rookery. These heroes won't be available in-game until they're released the next day. All alliances can still be completed even with these absences, and as we'll see later, some of the heroes have had their alliances reworked so that you have extra units in every alliance, so that some of them can go into the jail on occasion. Now this is going to provide like an ever-evolving meta. Every single day the meta is going to shift up. We've got, I don't know the exact number in the jail on the first day, but there are some key heroes like Crystal Maiden, Gyrocopter, Alchemist that are very commonly played in a lot of compositions. They are currently in jail, and today you cannot play with those. But in a few hours, when the day shifts over and it converts to the new day, they'll come out and a whole new batch will go in. So you're constantly going to see a slight change in the meta. It won't be exceptionally dramatic. I know a lot of people are like really worried that, oh my god, I have to relearn the meta every single day and it'll be so hard to keep up. In reality, I think it's going to boil down to is you're going to be saying, okay, I want to play a certain composition, and you say, well, there's going to be 1 or 2 units that are normally in that composition that are in jail today. I need to find a way to work around that. It doesn't make things completely unviable, but it just makes it so, okay, I need to work around this 1 or 2 unit absence. And I don't think that'll be an impossible feat, since oftentimes in a game you just don't find that unit and you need to work around them anyway. So it just kind of forces that constant adaptation, which I think is one of the core, fun, appealing parts of this kind of auto battler genre. So I'm really happy that this jail has been implemented. Next up, the XP curve has been changed up. XP is now advanced in increments of 5 instead of 4. This is just really good and logical because you spend 5 gold. And 5 gold to get 4 experience just didn't make any sense in the world, so it's now 5 gold for 5 experience. Perfect sense. The XP curve has been adjusted to compensate, and while in the broad sense, you're still going to have roughly the same timings, there are some specific differences. One big difference here is level 4. In the old system, you would hit level 4 starting on round 5. So as soon as you would go into, you'd play 1 PvP round at level 3 with everybody, and then on the next round, you'd get your 4th unit. As it stands in the new patch, you now require 5 XP, so you're going to play 2 PvP rounds with just 3 units unless you choose to level up, which probably wouldn't make much sense to spend that much gold early on. Later on in the game, though, essentially what this boils down to is passively gaining experience every turn. You would naturally get 1 experience per turn. That's going to be less and less valuable now that the raw numbers are just much higher. For example, to get between level 9 and 10, you're going to require 50 gold, which we required 50 gold previously, but it was only 40 XP difference. So you could wait 4 rounds, and then you would be able to level up that way. So this is going to completely throw off a lot of the timings of when it's optimal to level up. And instead of being on multiples of 4 rounds, it'll be every multiple of 5 rounds. And I'll have to see exactly how that shakes out. I'll definitely be making a video on more optimal timings to level up, since previously it was very common to level up on level 9, around 9. round 17 and 21. Those are like the big 3 popular rounds, but now those ones are out the window and things are going to change up dramatically because of this new XP curve. I couldn't tell you what they are right now off the top of my head, but definitely look for a strategy video about this new XP system coming very soon. All right, next up, we've got an item drop changes. The table for the item drops from wave 30 and beyond has been adjusted. So starting on wave 30 with the Thunder Hides, you're going to have, previously you had 50-50 shot at tier 3 and tier 4, and this led to a lot of like feel bad situations where you just get tier 3 items and it's just not great. Now it's going to be, essentially it's been buffed up. So what was previously on the Dragon, where you had 20/80, is now on the Thunder Hides, where it's 20% on tier 3, 40 on 80, or tier 4, 80%. The Dragon now has the 70% of tier 3, but the 30% of tier 5, which is previously on the Trolls, and so on with the Year Beast and Roshan. And if you ever get to Roshan, which I personally have never gotten to, and I doubt that will happen anytime soon, unless they've changed up something in the game, then Roshan will give you a 100% chance at a tier 5 item. So that's always good to see, you know, more tier 5s getting baked into the process, and, you know, it feels a little bit more rewarding to get to that late game situation of the Thunder Hides and the Black Dragon to potentially get these tier 5 items even earlier if you have something like Smuggler. Cool. So UI changes. The UI has received a major overhaul. That's all they're going to tell us because the UI is very, very different. I encourage you to go in game and check it out. It's hard for me to explain it all. I'm still figuring out some of it myself, but it's definitely a lot more polished, a lot more flashy, and just generally feels like a much more complete and engaging game. So really happy about that. Hero voice lines. Almost every hero has a ton of voice lines, with the remaining few still on the way, so that is great. That adds personality and character to the game to really get you engaged in, whereas previously it was like only a few voice lines here and there. It was really scattershot, really incomplete feeling. So really glad to have that flavor and that you know, that engagement with the game by giving them some personality and more voice lines. The Underlords. Now we've had a couple of videos talking about the preview of how the Underlords Hobgon and Essex will work here. And you can go back and check those preview videos for a little bit more detailed discussion. But basically, they're going to have this resource called Hype. First off, they are a permanent unit on your board that are pretty powerful, but they're roughly on par with most other units. They have this resource called Hype rather than mana to cast their abilities, and they use it as kind of a threshold. If they get to a certain level of Hype that required for their ability, then they will cast that ability whenever it is ready. You can see that right here. They'll cast the ability if you meet the threshold. Each ability has its separate cooldown, but you can gain Hype and lose Hype in different ways. If your Underlord is stunned or CC'd, they'll lose Hype, or they have their own individual ways of gaining Hype. Killing a unit with the Underlord, or, like, for example, Hobgon wants to attack many different targets, and Essex wants to have demons on your team. So that's very interesting. We're definitely going to be having, I don't think they say it here, but I believe the speculation is we have 2 Underlords right now, and we should be getting several more very quickly after here. Within the next week or 2, we should probably be getting another 2 or another 4 or some number of new Underlords in the coming weeks. So right now, we just got 2 to choose from. Personally, I'm more interested in trying out Hobgon. I like the arsonist throwing fire around, but obviously there's going to be a lot of people playing both. So feel free to experiment with whichever one you think is more interesting. They also come with some trash talk lines for taunts for both in the prep phase and as well as the combat phase, which if you see the new UI, you basically have your portraits of your Underlords, you and your opponents, kind of prominently featured on the screen, and then you can kind of taunt them during the combat as it's going on. Makes it a little bit more personal with your enemy. All right, next, we've got new heroes, but before we talk about these new heroes and dive into the numbers, I want to highlight one thing that's a little bit further down. Where's it at? Here, hero changes. All heroes have had their health doubled from their current values. This means that whenever you're looking at a number of damage or health, just know that health totals are doubled, but damage totals have not doubled. Your DPS on your units is still the same, but the health is going to be doubled. So things that looks like, oh, that would be a huge amount of damage, well, maybe not so much anymore. I'll talk more about that in a minute after we get through some of these new heroes and look through some of their abilities. So We've got Nyx Assassin is a tier 1 insect assassin who has Spiked Carapace as an active ability, requires 100 mana on a 10-second cooldown. Nyx Assassin will pop out spikes out of his carapace, negating and reflecting 100% of the damage dealt, max 1 time from each source, as well as stunning the source of the damage for 1, 1.5, or 2 seconds. And this makes him a good defensive assassin. One of my big complaints about assassins previously was how squishy they were and compared to how little damage they brought to the table. I mean, they brought good damage, but they were just so weak. They didn't have any defensive capabilities, and Nyx Assassin kind of bucks that trend, giving him a good reflecting ability, and also the stun is kind of a defensive ability because they're not attacking you for that 1 or 2 seconds. He also has a passive ability after he jumps or teleporting to attack a unit. Nyx Assassin will deal 200 bonus damage on his next attack and apply Break, which disables their passive effects for 4 seconds. We're going to see a lot more break effects in this new big update. I know Inesix does a lot of break effects, and now we've got Nyx Assassin, which can really substantially weaken the target that he's attacking. They're going to lose their passive effects and their alliance bonuses for that 4 seconds. So if you jump onto a warrior, they don't have all that bonus armor for being a warrior, and they'll be proved to be a much squishier target. Next up, we get Shadow Demon, a tier 1 Heartless Demon, and he's got the Demonic Purge ability. It repeatedly purges the target enemy unit, removing positive buffs, applying Break, just like we were talking about earlier, and slowing the target for 5 seconds. The unit slowly regains its movement and attack speed over the duration, upon which it takes 500, 800, 1100 damage at 3-star damage at the end of the duration, at the end of that 5 seconds. It does cost 100 mana and has a pretty long cooldown of 20 seconds at 1-star, it's still 15 seconds at 2-star. Now, this is going to be an interesting effect. It takes a long time to actually deal the damage, and previously I would have said, I'd be afraid that the unit is going to die in that 5 seconds and he's not actually going to get the damage off. But with the doubling of health totals, it's a little bit more likely that units will survive long enough to get the bonus out of this damage. I know that was one of the things that I said I was worried about when we previewed Shadow Demon, but maybe with the doubling of health, that will allay some of those fears. Next up, we've got Dazzle. Dazzle is a troll healer at tier 2. And his ability is Shadow Wave. Dazzle will send out a bolt of power that arcs between 3, 4, and 5 allies that are 3 cells apart, healing each ally for 80, 140, 200, while damaging enemy units in a 1 cell around for the same amount. Dazzle is always healed by Shadow Wave for 100 mana, relatively medium cooldown, 10 seconds, 8 seconds, 6 seconds. That's about on par with some other kind of intermediate cooldowns, so we could very easily cast this multiple times per fight. And the biggest thing to me about Dazzle is that he is a troll. And now that you get a lower tier troll and you don't require Troll Warlord to get your 4 troll bonus online, you can actually realistically achieve 4 trolls fairly early on in the game using Shadow Shaman, Bat Rider, Dazzle, and I'm missing the other troll, Witch Doctor. Those 4, Witch Doctor. So you can much more realistically get 4 trolls online in the early game. So I think that's the most important part with Dazzle. His ability sounds cool, it sounds nice, but I think that troll bonus is probably the most important part about Dazzle right now. Magnus, he is a Shaman Brute. He's a tier 2 unit that has Empower. Magnus will enrage an ally, granting them 30, 50, 80% bonus damage and the same amount of cleave for 20 seconds, which is probably going to be most of the fight. Requires 0 mana and is on a 7-second cooldown. So this is very reminiscent of Ogre Magi's ability, where he's just going to cast it right at the start of the fight, and then he's going to cast it on a set cooldown all the time, regardless of mana gain. And I just played around with Magnus a little bit in a practice tool right before recording this, and he seemed pretty cool. Previously, I was concerned that Cleave is not a very useful ability. We didn't see very high values of Cleave. I think we saw, 35% on Battle Fury, and it just never felt like it was relevant at all. But now we see, if you get Magnus to 2-star, which you're probably going to do pretty quickly if you're going to be playing him, you're going to get 50% cleave damage and 50% bonus attack. So if you're normally hitting for 100, you're going to hit for 150, and 75 of that is going to cleave. That's rather substantial because you're getting both the bonus damage and the bonus cleave. I think Magnus is going to be a really good unit, especially against tightly packed formations, where you can just get lots of value off of lots of people cleaving, and it'll be really strong. I'm really excited about Magnus. He's one of my favorite ones of this new patch. Weaver is an insect hunter, also at tier 2, and his ability is Shikuchi. Weaver shifts out of invisibility, becoming untargetable, and quickly moving through a target up to 3 cells away. Weaver will deal 60, 120, or 200 damage each enemy it passes through. Now, this is a really short cooldown with a really short mana requirement, a really low mana requirement. It only requires 20 mana, so that's like 2 or 3 auto attacks, and it has a relatively short cooldown. So Weaver is going to be a very elusive hunter. Not actually an elusive, but very hard to hit because it'll be shifted out of visibility for a good amount of time. Kind of like Morphling in a sense, where he does the waveform where he's untargetable for the duration. Not a very high amount of damage dealing, but the idea is that you're supposed to be casting this over and over again, constantly keeping Weaver safe by just being invisible and untargetable. Weaver does have fairly low health total for a tier 2 unit. I think he has 950, which would be equivalent to 475 previously, which would be near the lowest end in the game. So he really does need this this kind of evasiveness to stay alive in most fights. Io is a Primordial Druid in Tier 3. And now Io is probably one of the most unique effects we've seen so far in the game. Io has 2 abilities. Tether, which is an auto cast, kind of like the Magnus Empower. Io tethers to the nearest allied unit and pulls itself towards it. Io and the tethered unit gain 50, 80, 110 attack speed. Now that is a huge amount of attack speed. And 10, 20, 30% damage reduction. The tether will break if Io is more than 4 cells away. First thing is, like I said, huge amount of attack speed. Damage reduction, not so huge, but giving both Io and the tethered unit at just 1 star, 50% bonus attack speed. If you get it to 2 star, that you give them both essentially a moon shard, which you're probably going to get Io to 2 star by the time that it's relevant in the game. As a tier 3 unit, it's not that hard to get it to 2 star. And giving a moon shard to just like any one of your backline units, that is really powerful. Io itself doesn't deal quite as much damage, has rather low DPS, rather low stats, which is to be expected with such a powerful support unit. But, you give anything plus 80% attack speed, and then if you want to throw an attack damage item on Io to take advantage of the high attack speed, well, I'm a little concerned that this thing could get out of control for sure. Very excited to try to play Io and find out the compositions that it works best in. But we didn't even mention the most impressive ability that Io has, Relocate. This is a 100 mana ability at a 60-second cooldown, so just once per fight. Io will teleport away for 4 seconds to revive a dead hero. The 2 units then return with full health and are purged of negative effects. Wow. We get a way to revive a dead hero. And that is just absolutely crazy. It does require getting up 100 mana, which is totally feasible. It's probably going to happen before Io dies. And then you get to revive a hero, comes back with purged of all negative effects. I didn't test it, but I would presume its like cooldowns are reset. You don't get to choose which hero comes back, but ideally if you have like a frontliner, like say a Tidehunter, who is just gonna be up front and is just gonna die right off the bat because they're the first one taking aggro, they're gonna get their stun off, and then hopefully Io comes and relocates and gets your big CC unit back again. That could be very, very impactful to win the long drawn out fights. This to me is a little bit scary. It could become too good and too commonly applied, and you're going to want Io in every composition. But we'll have to see exactly how powerful Io ends up shaking out. I think Io is actually in jail right now, so I can't test it in like a live game against other people. But in about, I think the jail resets in about 5 hours, so maybe we'll get some gameplay with Io a little bit later today or tomorrow. All right, Legion Commander. Now this is another really exciting unit. We've got a human champion at tier 3. Legion Commander has the dual ability. Legion Commander will target the lowest health enemy 1 cell away, and they're forced to attack each other for 4.75 and 5.5 seconds. Neither hero can use abilities. Essentially, they're like taunted. And if either hero dies during the duration, the hero winning the duel gains permanent 5, 10, or 15 bonus damage. And that is forever. That lasts for the rest of the game. Costs 100 mana and has a 40-second cooldown, so you're probably only going to get 1 of these off per fight. Maybe 2 if you have something like an Octarine Essence, or if they get it off really quick and it's a very long fight. I didn't mention what the Champion Alliance does, but the Champion Alliance is a 1-unit alliance, so just Legion Commander gets it. And the champion gets all other alliance bonuses. So if you've got the warrior alliance that says your warriors get plus 10 or 20 armor, Legion Commander gets it. If you have the hunter bonus, which says they get to make bonus attacks, Legion Commander gets it. If you have the dragon alliance that says you get unlock an additional ability, well, there's an additional ability to unlock. Will of the Bull Snake. When Legion Commander wins a duel, she instantly heals for 50% of her maximum health. So this is a good way to make her tanky and probably get a second duel off if you're going to be nice and healed up during that time. So I'm very excited to see what kind of compositions we can craft around Legion Commander. Haven't tried it myself yet, but very exciting to kind of put this unit in who's going to benefit from all your alliances and can be a real super carry if you get her online early and get the stacking bonus damage up. If you get her too late, though, you might be losing duels and giving away the bonus to your enemies. Next up, we've got Lifestealer, a Heartless Brute at Tier 3. Now, in the initial preview a few days back, they said Lifestealer would be a Tier 1 unit. It seems like they've changed their mind and moved him up to Tier 3. And his ability is a passive called Feast. Lifestealer's attack will damage enemies and heal himself for 3, 4.5, or 6% of the target's maximum health. So this deals bonus damage and heals him, and that makes him really, really good at hitting tanks. Hitting people with high health total. Opponents like Pudge, which ironically are not alive, and therefore Life Stealer is somehow most effective against somebody who's not alive. A little bit ironic, but against opponents with high health totals, Life Stealer is going to be an absolute beast, especially if you can get him up to 3-star in the late game. He'll be on par with somebody like Slark for a big late game carry in terms of his ability to heal himself up and also deal massive chunks of damage. All right, Bristleback, a brawny savage. He's a tier 4 unit with Quill Spray. Bristleback sprays quills from his back, which actually damages all enemies 2 cells away. It doesn't go from his back like I initially thought. Enemies will take 40, 80, 160 damage, along with an additional 60, 64, 68 damage for each stack of Quill Spray that they have already been hit with this round, up to a maximum of 5 stacks. This is a very short duration, or short cooldown, 3 seconds, as well as only costing 20 mana. So you're going to see a Bristleback. He just wants to be right in the middle of the fight, taking a hit, casting this every single 3-second cooldown. He just wants to be spamming this out as much as possible. You probably do want to give him defensive items to keep him alive long into the fight. He doesn't have any good defensive abilities on his own other than Brawny, which will grant him bonus health. So he's going to thrive in the long fight, so you want to give him a defensive item if possible. Broodmother, Insect Warlock. We'll talk about the new alliance's Insect in a moment here. Is a tier 4 unit with the Spin Web ability. Broodmother will spin a web 2 cells wide on top of an enemy unit. Enemies in the web lose 20, 30, 40 attack speed and 80% movement speed. That is almost bring them to a standstill. As well as 50, 75, or 100% cast speed. It's probably pretty unlikely to actually get it up to a 3-star unit, but essentially they would not be able to cast at that point, I would gather. Cost 100 mana and a 25-second cooldown, so this is probably a once, maybe twice per fight, if it's a very long fight. Broodmother's an interesting one. The way the Warlocks work, their ability really wants you to be dealing damage so that you can heal up off of it, and this doesn't really do that, but it's a very powerful control ability, even at 1 star, because you can basically like root the units. 80% movement speed loss means that, if they need to come and get you, they're going to take so long to get over to you, and you can just be auto-attacking them the whole time. If like you have hunters behind it or something like that. Next up, Faceless Void is an Ace of Assassins, and also a Primordial Assassins. The Ace effect is allied assassins have a 5% chance per assassin alliance level to dodge attacks by jumping backwards in time, fully avoiding both physical and magical damage. And you get the plus 15% chance of finding Faceless Void if you have at least 1 level of the Assassin's Alliance completed. So this essentially amounts to a 5 to 10% damage reduction on your assassins, because you have a 5% or 10% if you have a 2-star or tier 2 of the Assassin Alliance completed. To completely dodge an attack. That's not a huge amount of defensive capability, but it certainly is welcome, as we talked about before with assassins just lacking defensive capabilities. His ability is Chrono Cube, creates a blister in space-time, stunning all units caught 2 cells away from the center of the cube, including your own, for 4, 5, or 6 seconds. Faceless Void moves very quickly inside the cube and gains 50% attack speed. Only Faceless Void is unaffected, so your own units will be stunned in this Chrono Cube. Meanwhile, Faceless Void just gets to walk around and just bonk people around while they're all stunned for that relatively long duration. Costs 100 mana, doesn't have a too terribly long of a cooldown. 15-second cooldown and then a 12-second cooldown if you can get him up to 2-star. It's pretty unlikely to get him to 3-star, but then it would go down to 9 seconds. So I'm really excited to play more Assassins. If you can get Faceless Void, get a big stun. Hopefully you isolate him so that Faceless Void only stuns your opponents, but sometimes you might catch friends in his Chrono Cube as well. Last new hero is Sven, is a human-scaled knight who's the Ace of Knights. The Ace effect here is whenever Sven casts his God Strength's ability, all allied knights will lose their knight bonus and gain 50% damage per knight alliance level for the remainder of the round. Once again, plus 15% chance for finding it if you have at least one level of the knight alliance completed, just like all other aces. And so this basically says your knights were a strong defensive alliance. Once he casts his ability, they're just going to turn into glass cannons. And they're going to hit real hard if you have 6 knights. Your knights essentially will deal plus 150% damage, which is massive. And although they will take more, or they'll take more damage because they don't have that damage reduction ability. I like this idea. I like this design of kind of a completely transformational ace, where instead of just augmenting and improving your units, you completely swap what the alliance is all about, swapping from defense to attack or vice versa. So I think it's an interesting design. It's hard to say if it's really a great unit. He does have pretty good other abilities. God Strength, his ability that casts. He enrages himself and gains plus 100% attack damage, or plus 150 if you're a 2-star, or if you somehow get him a 3-star, 200% for the rest of the round, the remainder 60 seconds. Costs 200 mana though, so this means it's going to take quite a long time for him to actually get this cast, which kind of makes sense. You want to have the Knight Alliance bonus for probably the initial wave of burst out of your opponent. But then after they kind of do that first wave of burst, he'll be getting up to 200 mana, he'll cast, and then all your knights go crazy and mop him up at the end of the fight. He also has the Great Cleave passive ability. The unit's melee attacks will strike nearby enemies for 30%, 45%, or 70% damage. And these numbers are quite a bit lower than we saw on Magnus earlier, but it's just passive, it's just always on him, so it's always a nice little bonus. Although I don't think a 30% cleave is going to be that huge compared to, how we saw Battle Fury previously with a 35% cleave, just wasn't all that substantial. If you get him up to 2-star though, it starts to become much more substantial, especially after he enrages, and especially with the knight bonus. If you're dealing 1 million damage, well then any amount of cleave is probably going to kill the guys next to him as well. Alright, back to the hero changes. We've talked about that all heroes have had their health total doubled from their current values. And I think what this means to me is that you're going to put a higher priority on units that have strong sustained damage output. Units like Hunters, like Arc Warden, even Knights who have good long duration fights. They're going to really benefit from this because their damage output hasn't changed, which means you're much less likely to get burst down. All of your units are much more likely to get the cast of their ability off at least once. Previously, like if you were able to focus fire a unit, you could kill them before getting their ability off. And that's just not going to be the case anymore because you have double the health total. I didn't actually check if mana gain has been changed at all. I haven't seen any mention of it. But I would presume it's going to be very hard to burst down, say, an opponent's Tidehunter before they at least get one Ravage off. So you really want to have the strong sustained damage output of a composition. I think that means that we see this kind of as a nerf to assassins and mages in particular. Mages are going to be dealing set amount of magic damage, especially units with big cooldowns like Keeper of the Light. Previously, Keeper of the Light would deal 700 plus magic damage to the opponent's board, and that would probably kill off whoever was still alive from a previous burst of Razor Alt or Morphling Alt or Dragon Knight Breathe Fire or something. But now with every unit having 2,000 or 3,000 health come the late game, 700 AoE just doesn't seem nearly as much. Even with the mage bonus, you're not going to see everybody get burst down in one wave of spells. You're going to need 2 waves of spells. and that's going to be problematic for those burst compositions. I'll have to see how it plays out in practice, but that's my gut instinct here, is that you might want to move away from like the pure burst damage focused compositions and try to do a bit more balanced, bit more long-term kind of composition building. All right, so for other hero changes, our friend Anti-Mage, his alliances have been changed. He used to be an elusive Demon Hunter, and the Demon Hunter has been completely removed from the game. There are no more Demon Hunters. Instead, he is an elusive Assassin. And so that means he's going to jump like an Assassin, and his maximum mana has been changed from 100 to 0. I don't know why he had maximum mana. Maybe that was just a remnant of old code in there. But his mana break also burns hype away from the Underlords. So it burns mana from units and also hype from Underlords, so making him very interesting unit for sure. He'll fit much more into an elusive Assassin build. We also have Axe has been changed from a Brawny Warrior to a Brawny Brute. We'll get to the Brute alliance changes in a second. That's I think in the next section here. Bat Rider has Sticky Napalm. The cell range has been reduced. Previously it would hit like darn near everybody in the enemy team with a 2-cell range. Now it'll just be a 1-cell range, so it won't hit nearly as many targets. I think that's an appropriate nerf because Bat Rider was actually really, really powerful in the early game, and it's good to see that kind of reduced in power just a little bit because he was one of the best in the long drawn-out fights, which I think are going to be more of a common occurrence now with the doubling of health total on everybody. Bloodseeker, his alliance has been changed from human Deadeye Assassin to a Bloodbound Deadeye. Ooh, that is interesting. So we're going to see Bloodseeker played a lot more in Bloodbound composition, certainly in the early game with Mr. Warlock and Ogre Magi. You give him buff from the Bloodbound, that is a really powerful effect because he wants to get the kills to keep on healing up. And seeing that happen with the Bloodbound bonus is going to be really cool. He also gets Deadeye, which has been slightly reworked here. But he's no longer an assassin. I guess if you would ever want to play him in an assassin comp, you're probably replacing him now with Anti-Mage in that assassin spot, or Nyx Assassin. I'm a little concerned about Bloodbound, or Bloodseeker in particular, because he's so reliant on the kills, and if everybody has double the health total, but his damage output stays the same, that could be a little bit problematic for him to get the kills in an appropriate amount of time. Have to see how that plays out in practice. But I'm a little concerned that he might be very, very weak at the moment. Crystal Maiden. Crystal Maiden has been changed from Tier 3 down to Tier 2. They have removed the Arcane Aura, and before everybody gets all up in arms and panicking that, oh my god, this is another huge nerf to mages, they've moved the Arcane Aura effect into the Human Alliance. So you'll still be able to get that kind of mana gain, but it comes from the Human Alliance rather than from Crystal Maiden as a unit. Instead, she has the Frostbite ability. Encases an enemy unit in ice, prohibiting movement and attack, while dealing 100, 125, or 150 damage per second for 3, 4, 5 seconds. That's a pretty big stun, 3, 4, 5 second stun. It's just on a single target, but also deals reasonable amount of magic damage over time. I think Crystal Maiden will be... she kind of does what Viper used to do when he had Viper Strike instead of Neurotoxin to make one unit... Viper would really reduce the movement speed and attack. They wouldn't prohibit it, it would just reduce it very dramatically, while also dealing damage over time. So Frostbite seems like a strict upgrade in that regard, even if the damage numbers are a touch lower. So I do think we'll see Crystal Maiden played as a unit in Mages, who deals reasonable amounts of damage, even if it's just single target damage, because of the usefulness of that stun. Alright, Doom, he is no longer a Demon Warrior and is instead a Demon Brute. And they also changed his cooldown from 10 seconds up to 20 seconds. They didn't want Doom's Doom ability to be cast too often in these fights. It seems like it's an extremely powerful ability. Doom was one of the most powerful units before this patch, so it's understandable to see a nerf like that. Once again, going back to fights are going to be a little bit longer and a little bit more drawn out, and having Doom constantly spamming this ability on a 10-second cooldown would be a little bit too strong. So I'm glad to see it reduced to 20-second cooldown. Eidolons. Eidolons are spawned by the Primordial Alliance, and rank 3 Eidolons are now possible if you have 6 Primordials. They have got, let me see, no changes to their attack and armor at Tier 1 and Tier 2, but at Tier 3, oh no, they did increase their attack damage at Tier 2. No, they didn't. Sorry, I'm bad at reading these things. Their attack minimum is still the same. Their attack maximum is still the same, and they just added tier 3. Okay, so the Primordials at rank 1 and 2 are still exactly as weak as they were before, and they were pretty weak. The Primordial Alliance was basically the weakest alliance in the game. It was just completely irrelevant. Now if you get up to 6 Primordials, they might be relevant. This is pretty substantial. They're twice as strong as the old rank 2 Eidolons, and the rank 2 Eidolons previously were fine. I mean, they weren't huge by any means, but their damage output is essentially going to double, and I presume their health total doubles, and their armor actually increases even more. So they're like very bona fide like units on their own at tier 3. So I'd be very interested to see if 6 Primordial builds actually come into the meta, or if they're still just as irrelevant as before. My concern is that they're still just as irrelevant at rank 1 and rank 2, and are super heavily dependent on hitting all 6 units in order to get that really powerful 6 Primordial Alliance. So it might be like a, super weak, super weak, super weak, super strong, like just a dramatic shift straight up. If so, that might make their build path very difficult to actually make it into a good composition. Next up, Enchantress. She was a Savage Druid, now she's a Savage Druid Healer. So just a strict buff to Enchantress, which is acceptable. She was fine in the early game, but really fell off hard in the mid and late game. And now with the Healer Alliance, which will increase healing for your whole team, Enchantress may be more viable moving into the later stages of the game. Enigma is no longer the ace of Shamans, and instead he is the ace of Primordials. His new ace effect says that allied Eidolons cast Malefice on their killer, stunning them for 0.4 seconds every 2 seconds. The effect lasts 2 seconds per Primordial Alliance, and the target takes 50 damage per Primordial Alliance each time they are stunned, plus 15% chance of finding if you have at least 1 Primordial Alliance. So this is probably going to be the capstone of getting the Primordial Alliance. You want to get 6 Primordials, get an Enigma in there, and then every 2 seconds for 6 seconds, they'll be like kind of mini stun for about half a second, and also take a pretty big chunk of damage. If you have 6, it'll take 150 damage every time they're stunned. So it's not like the most huge effect in the world, but I think it's going to be a very nice capstone if you can get up to 6 Primordials. His Midnight Pulse has been rather substantially nerfed, about half as much damage as it previously did. So I think overall this is probably a bad thing for Enigma. He was previously very, very powerful in the late game. Actually, hold on, never mind. This is probably appropriate because of the doubling of health totals. The raw damage output is probably the same. Yeah, so the raw damage output is going to be the same, actually, because everybody has double of health total. If you're only dealing 2.5%, you're still dealing the same amount of damage as it used to be at 5%. But of course, just to keep him in line with everybody else, because otherwise the percentage health scaling would scale way too much. Also, as I'm saying that, I just am reminded that Lifestealer has a percentage-based heal and damage, so maybe he's even stronger than I initially thought, because everybody has double the health total. So a percentage max health effect is going to be really powerful. All right, next up, Gyrocopter. His ace effect has been changed. He is still the ace of Deadeyes. Attacks from Deadeye units will then pierce their main target, dealing 100% damage per Deadeye Alliance level to the unit behind them. I think there's just one level of Deadeye Alliance, so you basically just get a cleave straight through them to deal damage to the unit behind them, and then the standard plus 15% chance Ace Claws. This is definitely better than the old one. I mean, the old unit granting True Strike was pretty much irrelevant because of how few elusives were actually in the game, which was the only way that True Strike was ever relevant. So it's good to see this actually being quite powerful and kind of doubling down on the fact that you want to be shooting vulnerable targets to get the cleave through them in optimal positionings. Keeper of the Light, maximum mana has been reduced from 150 down to 100, and then his mana cost on his ability has been adjusted accordingly. Now, once again, this looks like a big buff to mages, but once again, life totals are doubled, and I'm worried that mages may be a little bit weak in the coming meta, at least in their previous all one big burst kind of formulation, where you get 6 mages, everything with burst damage, and just hope to blow them out before your guys die. That probably won't be quite as useful as it used to be. Lena has got her attack rate slightly increased, a little bit faster attack speed. Tiers changed from tier 2 up to tier 3, so kind of swapping with Crystal Maiden. And her Laguna Blade now sets the target on fire for 5 seconds. And this interacts with Hobgen, the Underlord, who gains benefit for every opponent on fire. But also fire burns them for, I believe it's 2.5% of max health per second. Or some small percentage. Don't quote me on that number. But there's some small percentage of burn per second. So this actually is a damage increase for her, let alone her damage actually increased at every level of that ability. So to justify moving up to tier 3. Still worried about mages, but Lena might be a more key part because of this percentage health burn, and of course the interaction with Hobgen, which you'd probably want that to be your Underlord if you want to be going a mage composition. Medusa is now the ace of hunters rather than ace of scaled. The old ace effect granted retaliate, but the new ace effect harkens back to the old global item Hunter's Focus, where hunters will deal 5% extra attack damage per hunter alliance level for each other hunter attacking the same target, and the standard ace clause. This means that if you have, say, I think it's 2 tiers of the hunter alliance, which ideally you'd get 6 hunters with this, then every one of your hunters gets plus 10% bonus damage for every, so if like you have 2 guys attacking the same target, 2 hunters, they're both getting plus 10%. If you have 3 people attacking, then they all get plus, or it would be for each other. So if you have 3 people attacking, they would all gain plus 20% attack damage. And that's really useful to double down on the hunter's ability to really just focus fire individual targets quickly, eliminate them, knock them out of the fight before they can get abilities off or before they can really be a nuisance. And then you just go down the line. Focus one target, kill them off, move on to the next target, rather than an even spread of damage like you see with more ability-focused compositions. I like this change a lot. I think this is really good. Really good gameplay because 6 hunters were just not relevant in the previous meta. And now that this scales based on Hunter Alliance level, I think we might see more 6 hunters coming back in. Nature's Prophet is no longer a druid. Moved away from elusive druid and is now a... Oh no, he is a druid. Sorry, he is no longer an elusive. I'm bad at reading. He is an elusive druid and now he is an elusive... I'm bad at talking. He used to be an elusive druid. Now he is druid shaman. That was harder than I thought. Alright, so he's still going to be playing in the Druid Alliance. Still going to be good to level up your druids early. But he's now a shaman, which I think is quite a bit less desirable than the old elusive bonus. The shaman bonus just doesn't really seem very strong right now. I'm not a big fan of it. We'll have to see how it plays out in practice, but just randomly polymorphing the enemies for a few seconds, not exactly the strongest thing in the game compared to a passive damage reduction from the elusive. Necrophos, who was probably the strongest unit in the game previously, or at the very least the most commonly played. He used to be a Heartless Warlock, now he's a Heartless Healer, so he has lost the very, very important Warlock tag. And that is going to do a big number on a lot of compositions that really relied on Necrophos as a key Warlock, typically paired with Witch Doctor or Alchemist or some other good Warlocks. Necrophos is just off the table for that. He is still probably going to be a great unit with the healer bonus because he does do rather substantial healing with his big AoE healing effect. But it'll be a much more specific composition that wants to run him rather than just everybody, because everybody wanted to run Warlocks previously. Omni Knight, the change from Human Knight to Human Knight Healer, so just a straight buff to Omni Knight. You probably want to see this healer baked in with Necrophos, and he still probably goes into Knight's compositions because you can also get Dazzle along with the Witch Doctor for the troll bonus, but you might need to find another Warlock in there in order to complete the Warlock Healing Alliance, since Necrophos no longer counts for it. Sand King changed from a Savage Assassin to a Savage Insect, and I think this is a pretty big nerf. Initially, when we were talking about the Insect Alliance in the preview video, I was worried that, or I thought that insects were going to be mainly an assassin alliance because Sand King was in it, and so is Weaver, or so is Nyx Assassin, not Weaver. But now with the removal of Sand King from the Assassin Alliance, I don't really know how you want to play insects. Insects don't seem like they're very build around them on their own, and their other alliances are kind of all over the place. So I'm not really sure about Sand King anymore. I just don't know at the moment where insects fit in. It's not as obvious as something like healers where to fit in the Insect Alliance. Initially I thought it would be Assassins, but that's probably not the case anymore without Sand King being one of your Assassins. Shadow Shaman has received a rather substantial buff. His maximum mana was reduced from 100 to 70, and then of course that's the mana cost on his ability, is now going to be casting a little bit quicker. And the cooldown has been decreased from 10 seconds down to 8 seconds. I believe his duration lasts for 8 seconds if you get him up to 3-star. So Shadow Shaman 3-star may be actually the best 1v1 duelist in the game now if he can just hex you on it for 8 seconds on an 8-second cooldown. I still am not thrilled about him. He still deals very little damage, but they're trying to buff him, and you know, maybe we start seeing him a bit more. But just that polymorph effect is just not as effective as you'd like to think it would be. He does complete the Troll Alliance, which I think is going to move up in priority because of Dazzle added to the game. So we might just see him as an early game troll much more often if there's 4 troll compositions that become common and in the meta in the mid game. Slark received a rather substantial nerf. His Essence Shift ability, the stolen attack speed, has been basically cut in half from 357 down to 123. So it's even more than cut in half, really. This is a big nerf to Slark, which is unfortunate. He was my favorite unit in the game. Slark was just so satisfying to watch, especially if you got him to 3-star with a Mask of Madness. He would just go crazy, just completely dominate a fight. But he also had counterplay, I thought, if you position properly and were able to stun him. He was very weak and very vulnerable to being burst down because he had low health total. But I guess maybe this isn't quite as bad a nerf as it looks on the surface because, once again, health totals are doubling on everybody. That means longer fights, more drawn-out fights, and these kind of constantly scaling effects probably make a lot more sense in that regard. So I think Slark will still be powerful. It's hard. I don't think he'll be as powerful. I think this is still overall a nerf, but I'm not so worried that he's completely gone and out of the meta like he would have been if health totals were not doubled. Terrorblade, as we discussed before, is no longer a demon hunter. Instead, he is just a demon hunter. Oh wait, that didn't sound right. Instead of being a demon hunter, he's just a demon hunter. This is 2 separate words. He is a demon, which means he has the Demon Alliance, and he is a hunter, meaning that he can go into hunter compositions with other famous hunters like Bounty Hunter and Tide Hunter, who are not... Oh my god, this is hard. Those guys aren't hunters, but Terrorblade is a hunter. And it's actually one of the things that I wanted to... somebody asked me on stream a few weeks back, is well, what unit combination of alliances would you like to see? And I thought about it, and I thought, I would like to see a hunter who is a demon, because hunters scale on their attack damage. They want lots of attack damage because they have the bonus attacks from the Hunter Alliance. And then demons also get to scale off that. But as we'll see a little bit later, demons got reworked a little bit, so my wish was kind of didn't really work out the same way I'd like it to. But now we see Terrorblade being able to be played in hunter compositions rather than just tied to anti-mage. And that kind of tied him to elusive compositions by proxy there. So instead we'll start to see hopefully more 3 and 6 hunter combinations using Terrorblade as a key figure in that alliance, especially with the new Underlord Anessex, who likes to have lots of demons around. Tiny, he's got the toss ability. The stun duration has been reduced by about half a second at every level, and the cooldown has been slightly increased by one or 2 seconds at 2 and 3 star. This was an appropriate nerf. I think Tiny was definitely the premier tier 1 unit. He was just so commonly played all the time in everybody. He was one of the best just because he had a massive stun. So seeing it reduced by half a second at every level and the cooldown slightly increased, I think is an appropriate nerf to bring him kind of back towards still just a good unit, but maybe not the most overpowered unit in the early game, the best warrior at least. Treant Protector, he has changed from an elusive druid to a druid brute. So in the same vein as Nature's Prophet, who I really struggled to say the words for, he is no longer an elusive and is instead a brute, whereas Nature's Prophet went to become a shaman. So Nature's Prophet and Treant Protector are just kind of divergent now. I mean, they're still druids, so you still might play them together, but they go towards a little bit different secondary alliances rather than just elusive. The Brute Alliance is kind of a defensive alliance in some sense, not quite as powerful as the Elusive Alliance was. But it'll be very interesting to see how Brute builds develop. But I still think Treant Protector is going to be a great early game unit because of his massive healing effect that chains between different targets. I think Treant Protector is still very, very useful, very strong in the early game despite this adjustment. Mr. Warlock, Alliance has changed from Bloodbound Warlock to Bloodbound Warlock Healer. So just a straight buff to Mr. Warlock, which is fair. He was kind of underperforming, so I'm glad to just see we just got the Healer Alliance tacked on, and you'll start to see him as a key part in a lot of Healer Alliances, especially because he is a Warlock Healer, and Warlock and Healer are like a match made in heaven because Warlocks do healing and Healers amplify healing. Perfect combo. So we talked about a lot of these alliances in passing previously. So the Brute Alliance, whenever a Brute attacks an enemy, it applies a negative 15/40% damage debuff for 3 seconds. So whoever you're attacking is going to be dealing less damage for a few seconds. And when the debuff is initially applied, it deals a big bonus of 50 or 100 damage. Brutes will prefer to attack enemies that do not have the debuff. So if there's multiple people all surrounding you, you're going to make sure everybody has that damage debuff applied, so they're not going to be dealing quite as much damage to you. This kind of makes it a hybrid between an offensive and defensive ability. I do like the idea of trying to run 4 Brutes because giving your opponents minus 40% damage sounds really, really powerful. It's kind of on par with giving yourself like a 40% evasion buff, right? Their attacks are going to be dealing 40% less damage. In the meantime, you're also dealing 100 bonus damage kind of per attack. I mean, there'll be some attacks that are not applying the debuff, but in a lot of cases, since it's such a short duration, a 3-second duration, you're going to get to apply this bonus 100 damage a lot of times. So I'm looking forward to seeing Brute as kind of a core alliance to compete with things like Warriors and Knights, or Hunters and Assassins, like kind of for your core build-around alliance of Brutes. Champion Alliance, we mentioned this earlier with Legion Commander. Champions receive all alliance bonus. Healers, as we mentioned as well, they just simply amplify healing. Nothing too fancy here, but makes good combos with Warlock in particular. Spiderlings. Spiderlings will constantly swarm the edge of the board if you have the Insect Alliance, which requires 3 insects. Spiderlings are untargetable units that deal low damage and have 1 health, so if AoE effects come out, they'll still die, but then they'll respawn shortly thereafter. Enemies bitten by Spiderlings have a 30% chance to miss their attacks for half of a second. Spiderlings are replenished upon death to a maximum of 12. So you're going to see lots of enemies or lots of swarms from the side of the board. Pretty low damage and not a huge miss chance. I guess if they're depends on their attack speed and exactly how often they get on the same target. I'm just really concerned about this really short duration. We'll have to see how it plays out in practice, but essentially I see this as a pretty good defensive alliance. Assuming you can apply this, let's say you apply this to everybody on the whole board constantly. You know, you've got 12 Spiderlings and opponent has less than 12 units most of the time. If every Spiderling is attacking enough to have 100% uptime on this buff, that's essentially a 30% damage reduction to your team or a 30% evasion. So I kind of am going to view that as a primarily defensive alliance, even though it does a little bit of bonus damage. But in practice, it's probably going to be less than that because they're not going to have 100% uptime. I don't think they would have that fast of attack speed. I haven't checked myself, but that would be pretty quick attack speed. And they have low health, so if they get hit by an AoE, they're going to take some amount of time to respawn and get back onto your target. They'll eventually get there, but it would just take a little bit, and you won't always have a perfect 30% uptime on that damage reduction. Other alliance changes to existing alliances. The old Brawny bonus, each individual Brawny unit would rack up a bunch of kills, and then that one Brawny unit would get massive. Now, all Brawny units will gain much less health, 15 or 30, as opposed to the old 30 or 60, maximum HP for each kill by any of your team's Brawny's units throughout the game. So no need to say, oh, I really need to get all these kills on Beastmaster as opposed to Axe or as opposed to Juggernaut to make one huge guy. Instead, every kill that you get with your Brawny units are going to make all of your Brawny units better, even if it's at a slightly slower rate, which is even doubly slower because everybody has doubled their maximum HP, so this is much smaller benefit. But of course, instead of applying to 1 unit, ideally it's going to apply to 4 brawny units. So on the whole, I think the total amount of equivalent HP is probably still going to be the same, especially once you get it up to 4 brawnies, because instead of one guy getting 60, you've got 4 guys getting 30, but then 30 is kind of half as effective. So overall, it should be roughly in the same vein of effectiveness, but now it's going to be a much more spread out buff rather than all onto 1 unit. I think that's overall a bit of a nerf because Beastmaster was just so dominant, especially in the long fights when you got to cast multiple wild axes. But I think that's fair because I think that was a little bit of an unhealthy play pattern, a little bit too good. Whereas this makes a lot more sense to have it all evened out among all the Brawnies. Deadeye, in addition to the standard alliance bonus, melee Deadeye units will have phasing movement so they can walk through enemies and get to the appropriate target on time. Just a good quality of life buff on that one. Demon, the old demon bonus gave plus 50% pure damage and only wanted 1 demon. And of course, with the reveal of Nesix, I was definitely concerned that, well, she wants to have multiple demons on the board, but the Demon Alliance doesn't want to. That's like really clashing design, and I thought that was bad design. But actually, they've reworked the Demon Alliance. Whenever a demon casts a spell, for 4 seconds, all demons are silenced, and the caster will gain plus 50% bonus pure damage for each allied demon. All demons to me means enemy demons as well. So in some sense, if you're going to play a demon mirror match, you want to make sure at least one of your demons is going to cast absolutely first to silence the enemy demons. This is really weird, to say the least, because it all silences your units, but then the unit who made a cast is going to be like supercharged for 4 seconds, like really, really supercharged. If you have multiple demons, especially. I could really see this working out very well with Terrorblade in particular, because when he casts and transforms, he wants to be dealing tons of damage during that transformation. That's like the whole point of Terrorblade. So I would really like to see this bonus with lots of demons built in, especially with Nesix as your Underlord of choice, and then you get your Terrorblade transform, and then he just completely demolishes people for the next 4 seconds. And then once the rest of them are not silenced, maybe you've got another guy who can cast like Doom or somebody, or Shadow Demon, and then they can take their turn at being really powerful. This should be really strong against an opponent who doesn't have any demons on their board, because their demons won't silence yours, but it can also work against opponents who do have demons if you get the silence off first. So it seems very swingy, but I like the design. I definitely like the move away from active only if you have one type that we saw, because that would cause a lot of problems with a Nesix in particular. Demon Hunter, been removed from the game. The Demon Hunters have been reassigned. We talked about that already. Elusives, the old Elusives just gained a flat evasion percent, but instead, all elusive units now have a 10 or 20% chance to gain 100% evasion and plus 35 attack speed for 3 seconds when attacked. To me, that sounds insanely strong. Like, really, really strong. Anytime I see 100% or 0%, I'm really concerned in games. I'm really concerned about abilities that are 100% or 0% because they have so little counterplay and they just feel so bad if you're on the wrong end of it. Like, imagine a unit just hits this 10% chance 3 times in a row. Okay, I mean, it seems unlikely, but you have to consider every set of 3 attacks that you ever make. I mean, you're making hundreds of attacks against a unit over a course of a game. They're going to hit that 3 times in a row, or the 20% chance 3 times in a row, probably once or twice a game, where they're just going to be invulnerable for 9 seconds in a row. That feels really bad to try to play against, like, oh, they're a big tank, or somebody who's tanky. I actually don't know if there's too many tanks left in the elusive composition, but somebody who's you're trying to get killed is just evading your attacks for 9 seconds straight, and that's not going to be a too unreasonable of occurrence. So I'm going to keep my eye on this one. I think this one might be a little bit powerful. I'm just scared when I see 100% from a game design and balance perspective. All right, the human bonus, as we alluded to earlier, the Human Alliance used to cast silences but from auto attacks, which I thought was a really like awkwardly bad alliance, both from the fact that like it was underpowered, but also that it was really annoying to play against. And instead, they have the Crystal Maiden passive, where allies will generate 4, 7, or 10 mana per second. That's actually an increase from the... actually, no, that's the same amount as the Crystal Maiden, or previously, whereas 8, 14, 20 per 2 seconds. So it's the same amount of mana generation. You basically have a Crystal Maiden at 1, 2, or 3 stars, depending on how many humans you have. So good news is that most mage compositions really wanted to get that many humans anyway. So effectively, mage comps are relatively unaffected. I mean, you do want to put a higher priority on getting up to 4 humans now, rather than just staying at 2. So you do want to find, say, Kunkka or Dragon Knight to pair with your Keeper of Light, Crystal Maiden, and Lina, just to make sure you get up to at least a tier 2 of that bonus. Primordial. The Primordial Alliance has been changed up to 2, 4, 6, as we discussed earlier about the stronger rank 3 Eidolons. Still is going to be pretty weak at 2 and 4, though. They didn't make any adjustments there. Savage, the attack damage gain has been decreased back to the levels it was before its buff a few patches back. And I think what really happened was the developers were playing with these 4, 8, 15 buff. And they were playing with the doubled health totals on like their internal builds. And they probably thought, oh yeah, this seems balanced. This seems fine. But then they forgot that, oh, we doubled the health totals. I forgot about that. And that makes these kind of constantly scaling effects that work better in longer, more drawn-out fights. That made them disproportionately powerful. So in the shorter fights on live servers, they needed to buff them quite substantially. So I think this is just kind of a correction to bring them back to roughly the same power level that they are, but just based on the changes to health total and the longer fights, Savages should be in roughly the same kind of spot they were in before, like we talked about with Slark earlier. Shaman. The Shaman bonus used to have a 17% chance to turn him into a chicken. Now they're only going to hop 2 cells if you only have 1 tier of the Shaman Alliance, or 4 cells if you have a second tier. I didn't know you can get a second tier. I guess they added a lot of shamans, so now you can get a second tier of the Shaman Alliance. The problem is each shaman can only turn each enemy into a chicken once per battle. So this is I think overall this is a nerf, and I think it's a pretty straight up nerf, which is very unusual to me, because I think shamans are pretty weak. And seeing them just straight up nerf its direction, or its distance, and nerf for once per battle, I'm not liking it. I think shamans are going to be very weak, even if they're a little bit more readily accessible. You might just get them on accident. You know, oh, I got 1 tier of the Shaman Alliance, but you know, you're not too upset if you lose it or you gain more of it. If you're just playing something like Magnus, when we're really excited to play in brute compositions, maybe you throw in another shaman or 2 along with him to just get the shaman bonus, but you know, you're not going to go out of your way for it. All right, next up, there's some new items and some item changes too. The tier 3 item is an Assassin's Veil. The equipped hero will always attack the enemy Underlord if able. Equipped hero's attacks against the enemy Underlord remove 10 hype on a 3-second cooldown. So this is a really good way if your opponent's Underlord is just a little too strong. Throw this on an assassin who they can jump and hopefully get to their Underlord. Or throw it on a ranged unit who has a really long range so they can always be in range of that Underlord. Just to be able to remove their hype and reduce their efficiency and hopefully kill their Underlord earlier on in the fight as quickly as possible, which then will make your Underlord gain even more hype because the opposing Underlord is gone. They also have Celebratory Murder Gong. What a name for an item, huh? It's a tier 2 item. Every time the equipped hero gets a kill, they generate 20 hype for your Underlord. That's a pretty substantial amount of hype. You really want to get an early kill with this and then get your Underlord just going crazy with their abilities. It doesn't provide any combat stats on its own, though, which is kind of in the same vein as most other tier 2 items. Most tier 2 items don't provide too much combat stats. They're kind of like a unique, interesting effect. So I think this kind of fits right in, and I think it could be a pretty high pick. We'll have to see exactly how it works out, especially when they add in more Underlords. This could be much more effective with other Underlords than the current ones. Time will tell and testing will tell. But I like this design. I think it's interesting, and I love the name, of course. Okay, item changes. I believe this is the last section. The item changes, everything that used to offer health has been doubled in effectiveness. So Big Time Contract has doubled from 250 health up to 500. Eye of Scotty from 400 to 800. Fall from Grace has actually been removed from the game, so no longer can you convert your humans into Heartless. If you want the human bonus, or if you get humans, you have to keep the human bonus. I'm not so sold on this one. I thought Fall from Grace was fine, especially with the change to the Human Alliance, making it much more appealing for certain compositions now, based on the mana gain. I think Fall from Grace was a reasonable item to have around. I didn't think it was like... I thought it provided interesting gameplay decisions that, oh, sometimes you want to pick this because it's good for this comp, sometimes you don't because it's actively harming you, and sometimes like you don't know enough yet to commit to Fall from Grace. Like if I would get it on turn 2 previously, I would never pick it. I'd be like, I don't want to commit to a Fall from Grace build just yet. So I'm not a fan of removing this. I thought it was a good item, but they want to keep people getting the alliances they want to get, and I think that's fair. Healing Ward, the healing per second has increased doubly, just like other health things, from 20 to 40. Now, unlike most of the other health things where I just say, oh, you know, that's the same because you have double health totals everywhere, it's the same percentage increase. This is actually a little different because the healing per second is still kind of checking against opponent's damage output, right? Like previously, if you had a unit dealing 100 DPS, the healing ward would prevent 20 of that, prevent 20% of it rather. But now you're going to have that same unit dealing 100 DPS, but now the healing ward is preventing 40 of it per second. Because remember, the damage is still dealt per second, whereas flat health is just flat health. So I think this is actually a buff to healing ward, a rather substantial one actually, a doubly effective healing buff. Is that good enough to bring it into the meta? I'm hesitant to say that because it was just so incredibly weak before, but I'm going to keep my eye on it. I think it may have potential to be a much more powerful item now. Heart of Tarask, double the health from 1,000 to 2,000. Should be much more common, by the way, because of the increased tier 5 odds. You can start getting that as soon as the Dragon, or even the Thunder Hides if you have a Smuggler. Mechanism, the heal has been doubled, kind of just like the effective health bonus on everybody else. Tombstone has been nerfed again. The armor changed from 20 down to 10. I thought that's another excessive nerf. Tombstone was already a pretty low tier 4 item. Like it was pretty bad to pick up. But they nerfed it again, so I don't see any reason to pick up Tombstone like ever again. So I don't know, it was pretty fun when it was really strong, but now it seems pretty useless. And then Vanguard and Vitality Booster also doubling the health total on all of them. Wow, that was a big patch. They certainly delivered. They said this was going to be the big update, and boy was it. There was a lot to unpack there and a lot of speculation on the upcoming meta. But in reality, it's going to take a long time to sort through all this and really figure out what's good, what's weak, what the new gameplay strategies are. But I'm really excited for it. I think they made a lot of really good changes to the game with the Underlords, the jail system, the duo mode. Can't wait to play some duo games. Just all kinds of stuff. I'm excited to get in, so I'm going to end the video here, and I'm going to go and play some more games myself. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and then also stay tuned for more content from Dota Underlords as I sort out the meta, and I can share all of that fun information with you guys. Thanks for watching.